So on my second artboard, I have kind of the parts I've used to do that. And so I'm just going to recreate this letter W. And then, as you can see, once you have one letter form, the easiest way to approach it is then to think of other letter forms that have similar parts, and then you can reuse. So that streamlines your workflow. So I'll demonstrate what I mean by that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I just laid down this letter, and when I have my type character window out, I can see the font it comes from and the size. So the first thing I do is turn that into outlines. So you can go to your type window and go create outlines. It's basically Command Shift O makes it into outlines. Then I'm going to duplicate it, just Option or Alt and click, and it duplicates it. I can rotate, just rotating it around. If I hold down the Shift key, it'll sit flat when I rotate it. And at this point, I'm going to zoom in because I want to have the letter more, the counter space, as you can see inside, okay, that is pointed. And I also want the outside to be pointed. Right now it's horizontal. So what I'm going to do is go get my pen tools, and so I can edit this. And all I'm going to do is click with my direct selection tool, so I get my outlines of my path, and I'm going to eliminate one of those points. And then I'll use my white arrow tool, my direct selection tool, and I'll just click on that point, and I'm going to move it over. And at that point, I have my smart guides turned on, so you can see this pink line. And if you go to your view and turn on your smart guides, that can be a helpful thing to have. So then I'm wanting to create a shape that's a little, now you can see I've got lots of points there. So I'm going to actually get rid of some of these. I don't need so many. There we go. Might even get rid of all of those. And then I can move this, and all of a sudden I have a better shape to work with. Okay, something like that. And you can edit that as much as you want. You know, the details are, sometimes you get really obsessed with your details, which is good. And you'll notice that as you do this letter construction, hopefully your eye will start adjusting and going, oh, these little details actually make them really clean and finished looking. And so that's a good outcome. So I've got my basic shape, which is there. And I can see now that that makes up part of my W, the center part. And now I have to have my stroke that is on both sides of this inverted V shape. So essentially what I would do, I mean, you could trace it, you could create your own, but I'm going to see if I can just mimic this square kind of shape from the V. Now I want it to be the same width, so I'm going to try to lay it down, and there, my guides help me kind of get the perfect rectangular shape. And I'm going to change the color, so maybe I can see. And yeah, that's going to be good. And I'll just kind of narrow my stroke a bit. And then I might have to end up editing this once I move it. But basically, I'm just going to grab the bottom 2 points, and then I'm going to grab the right point. I'm just using my direct selection tool to select these points. And maybe I should zoom in a bit so you can see that. It's a little maddening working with these points, but if you click off, you just want to go, and you have to actually click right on the point. And then I'm going to use my arrow key. Sometimes that gives me a good feeling. It doesn't have to be exact, but it should just have good form. All right, so there's my rectangular shape. I'm going to move that off. And I can always edit it if I wanted to make it, more balanced in terms of the weight at the top and the bottom. Then I could do something like that. So you can edit those as you see fit. Okay, so then the other thing I'm going to do is I want to eventually add that. I might have to make it a little fatter so I can stretch it out that way if I want. And at that point, I'm going to fill it with black. If I hit the D key when I've got a shape, you can see that it sets the default colors. And then I can just transfer the stroke to the fill, and I get my solid color black. And I'm going to zoom in again because I've got to move along fast here. I seem to have like this space here is really big. So what I'm going to do is, I can see this is my model letter, and it's just that counter space is really big. So I'm going to take my points and I'm going to make it a little more upright, bring it in a bit. And maybe I can move that over, and I can move that over. And that feels a little more proportionate. Okay, and then I'm going to Option drag, and I've got my other stroke to finish my W letter form. And so now I need to reflect this. So over on your tool palette, there's a couple of tools here for rotating and reflecting. And reflecting is when you can just copy something and reflect it either vertically or horizontally. So I'm going to use my reflect tool. If I'm on that tool and I have a shape selected on my artboard, then I just double click on this and I get my reflect tool window pops up. Make sure you hit the preview button, and then sometimes it's just easy to play around with what you have going on here. So I've got basically a flip, and that's what I wanted, but you can play around with the axis, and if you have your preview turned on, then you can see what it's going to do. So then I can just move this into place and something like that. And there's my letter. I can always select it and adjust the dimensions this way if I wanted to, so I could make it not as wide. So there's minor adjustments like that you could do. And then I need to start adding my embellishments. So let's do that fast here. So essentially, I'm going to just move this so I have a little more room to work. I'm going to take my line segment tool, and I'm just going to add some lines. And right now, I'm not going to worry how they're situated. I want to use a couple of colors. So first of all, I'm going to use this kind of mint blue color, and I'm going to adjust the stroke down to 2.5. And maybe I want another one of those, so I'm going to then use my Option or Alt click, and I can duplicate those. And I'm actually going to put in 4, and I don't want them to be perfectly placed. So there's my, and I can edit all those down a bit just by selecting them. And at this point, maybe the strokes are going to be hard to trim, but just try to make it look as good as you can. And we'll talk about how to trim things in the future, in future classes. All right, so right now I'm just using my white arrow tool, and I'm selecting all 4 points, and then I can kind of move them all up. And of course I've got one that is a little bit longer, so I'll bump that up. Then I can also use that to select one of the lines, and I want to make one white. So I'm going to make one white. Let me see. Oh, there we go. Okay, with my stroke weight, I can make that a little fatter. And I might have to bring it in just a bit. Something like that. In order to place something, you have to zoom in to kind of adjust it exactly the way you want. As you can see, my strokes here don't quite line up, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. I'm just going to reduce them a little bit. Okay, something like that. So you get the idea. And then I can move that. Actually, with my black arrow tool, select them all, and I can move it into place. If I wanted to add, and now actually when I finish my artwork and it's completed, then I can group that together. So if I go up to my, select them all with your, you get through your selection tool, and go up to your object menu and do group, and now they're all one. And if I want to edit that later on, I can ungroup it just by going object ungroup, and then that makes me, I can select certain parts again. All right, so right now I'm just going to do Command G to group. And then there's just a couple of other embellishments. For now, I want to make a few ellipse shapes, so I'm going to make one of those, and I want that to be that kind of minty color, so I'm going to fill both of those, and I'm going to go in and see here if I can place one that's a little big, so I can make it smaller just by editing it. Place one there. Now I need to make a triangle, so I'll go get my polygon tool. And any of these tools, when you want the window to pop up so you can customize the shape, you just double click. And then when I click on my artboard, I get my window for it. To make a triangle, you need to put in 3 sides. And then there's my triangle. It's ginormous. So I'll make that a little smaller, and I'm going to flip it around, hold down the Shift key, and then a little flip and sit evenly. And now I have to make this smaller, so I can just scale it in by dragging the corners. And I'm going to make it a little narrower, move that in there, maybe move that. And again, if you can't get it the way you want, you just have to zoom in. So I'm going to make it fit just by using the white arrow tool and dragging each part where I want it. Something like that. All right. And there's my, and then I would just repeat and play. And the more you create your letter forms, then the more you will refine them. So by the time I finished my W, I thought that was pretty good until I made my X, and I basically just took the same shapes. I reuse what you've done. So I've got my parts, and basically I just Alt Delete and I bring it over here, and then I had to adjust my stroke a bit, right? Basically I just selected those and I made them a little taller, right? I can stretch out the actual shape, And if your lines get, a little messed, then maybe that's a good thing, That could be a little more interesting. So sometimes the mistakes you make when you're creating your artwork you like, and that's good too. So you can see that there I've got, pretty simple makings there for another letter. I'll just Option click and copy it. I'm going to get my reflect again, and I hit OK. Use my black arrow tool to, okay, so now you can see my X doesn't quite look like it does over here. So that tells me that I have to work with essentially moving, and this is going to really stretch my artwork in a way that maybe I like, maybe I don't like. And you can see those lines are getting in the way, but something like that, so yeah, so maybe I have to play with those. Maybe I want to get rid of those lines for now, although I kind of like some of them. So, and I can just edit my form this way. Oh, and I'm just using my arrow keys. So something like that. Maybe that's going to make a better X. So you kind of have to play with your forms and give yourself time to experiment and create some fun stuff.